Let's see, anybody know which U.S. state is leading the way in solar in a lot of ways? This is a harder one.
Michigan.
Michigan's beating us on some things, not there yet, but they're actually going after some of these jobs, so we laugh. California's doing a lot, but not per capita.
No.
Oh, okay.
You just,
Angela got it right. New Jersey. Anybody here a refugee from New Jersey? Dean. He should have guessed. I love New Jersey, great place. I think of Sinatra, Springsteen, Sopranos. Not exactly thinking of a whole lot of sunlight though. Am I right, Dean?
You're right.
Arizona, again, is a place that has more concentrated sunlight, the kind of sunlight you need for solar power, not just in the western United States, not just in any other place in the United States, more than in any other place in the developed world. And yet we're losing out to Germany and New Jersey and all these other places. And the reason comes down to the fact that we have not been putting our resources and our state's energy behind making sure those jobs are coming here and not to New Jersey and not to Oregon and not to these other places around the world. Arizona needs to lead there, and the fact is we're in a race right now, and once this race is decided in the next few years, we lose out forever. Think about the auto industry 100 years ago. Cars were being built in Cleveland and Chicago and all over, and eventually one place won out and became Motor City, Detroit. And if you were interested in the auto industry, you wanted to do a spin-off company, you had talent, you wanted to do something along those lines, that's where you went. And it was the same with computer chips 50 years ago. Being built all over, and eventually one place that people weren't paying much attention to, a place south of San Francisco that became known as Silicon Valley. In the next few years, one place is going to become the solar state. That is going to lead in that way, just as Detroit did in cars or Silicon Valley did in computers. And if we lose out on that chance, we lose out on that opportunity, we lose out on that ability to drive forward our economy in ways that aren't just with solar, but with every other business in this state. We lose out on that chance forever. So that's one of the things the state treasurer should be thinking about. Number two is state treasurer has audit power over state government. Anybody here raise their hand if you remember the last time you heard about an audit being conducted by the state treasurer's office? I know it's early in the morning, and don't all raise your hand at once. Well, the fact is we haven't been seeing that happening. And as we know right now, we are in a place where we're going to have to learn how to do more with less in state government. And we're going to have to go out and find some of the waste and fraud that we all know is out there, the kinds of things I actually used to look for when I was a prosecutor. And we're going to have to figure out ways to make sure that we are getting taxpayers more bang for their buck and providing them the kinds of services that they have come to expect from the best of the private sector that they're just not getting out of state government. And that's something the state treasurer should be thinking about as well. And the third thing and the last thing the state treasurer does of these three big things I'm talking about is to really act as Arizona's chief economic officer. You know, you think about the way state government is set up, right? You have a governor who worries about everything under the sun. Immigration and healthcare and law enforcement, the economy, education, you name it. But then you have different people in state government whose job is to think about one thing and really be concentrated in that area. You have an attorney general who's the chief law enforcement officer, and he or she is bringing ideas to the legislature on cybercrime or meth or consumer protection or immigration to say these are the kinds of things I believe need to be done in this area. And it's the same with the superintendent when it comes to education. When it comes to our economy, when it comes to Arizona's state economy, the treasurer is the person who is supposed to be bringing their ideas to the legislature. And they've been doing that. We've seen that under Dean Martin. He's been bringing all kinds of ideas, whether we agree with them or not, to the legislature. I think we need a state treasurer who's going to be out there fighting to say, how can we make sure we have an economy that's working for the middle class, working for the working class, working for people all up and down the income scale in this state, working for people from all walks of life. We haven't had that kind of leadership. We haven't had the leadership that says, here's how we're going to move this economy forward into the next generation. And we have been hurting because of that. Think about where we're in 2010 now. The economy started to head down in 2006. 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. This is the 5th year now that we've been seeing this kind of situation. The worst economy, by some measures, Arizona has ever faced. And nobody here can name a single thing that the state government has done to try to turn things around. Not something good, not something bad, not something that's liberal, not something that's conservative. They have done nothing. Nobody there has lifted a finger to say, how can we start jump-starting our economy? How can we start creating jobs? How can we start renewing the promise of Arizona's economic dream? They have done nothing. And we need a state treasurer to be rolling up his sleeves or her sleeves or whoever it is to be able to make sure that we push things in the right direction, to build a coalition from people from all walks of life, from all over the state. Democrats, Republicans, independents, business community, community groups, whoever they are, to come together and say, let's start getting things done, let's start moving things in the right direction, let's start creating the kind of economy we need for the 21st century, but the kind of economy we need right now to make sure we're getting ourselves out of these economic doldrums. And so that is what the state treasurer's job is as well. Let me talk a little bit, just in finishing up, about the campaign itself. Nobody here is going to mind if I talk politics a little bit, right? We started out by saying we need to do things differently if we're going to win. And so things look really good for us in that respect. Number one, as you heard, we don't have any Democratic primary opposition. That means we can be unified and we can be spending our time talking to independents and moderates in both parties and the people that we really need to be reaching out to make sure we get our message across. Two, we have been seeing, of course, that we have an open seat. Dean Martin is now running for governor, which means there's no incumbent in the office, and we're really able to say, here's what we all believe in, here's the kind of change we seek to bring. And then third, we understood that if we're going to win a race like this, we have to be able to get our message out. And unfortunately, with the clean election system and all the problems we've seen with the court decisions and everything like that, that's no longer feasible. So we've gone out there and said we're going to raise the money from people like yourself. We set it as our goal to raise more in the first report than any previous statewide candidate other than people running for something like governor or senator. The previous record was held by Janet Napolitano, and she had raised $109,000 in that first report. So we tried to go out and say, let's see if we can raise more than she raised by the January 30th report. When the reports came out, we were running against a couple of people in the state legislature on the Republican side who are going to the lobbyists for contributions and support. We raised not just more than $109,000, we raised $354,000 in that first report, most of our contributors giving $100 or less. So we set a huge record for Arizona. As I said, running against a couple of state legislators who are going to lobbyists, we raised far more than they did even with that kind of support. Now, we did so well that now in just the past week we've been raising the attention of our senator from the state, John Kyle, who has gone out there to try to recruit candidates to run against me because they want to stop us from bringing these kinds of changes to the state, trying to preserve the status quo. And so he's going out there trying to recruit people who are multimillionaires to get into this race because they think that's the only way they can stop us. That just means I need all of your help even more. All of you have, along with everything else on the table, some contribution envelopes. This is a race where every dollar counts. Whether you can give $5 or $50 or $500, every bit does help us to get to where we need to get to so we can make sure that the people of Arizona hear this message. I know how the rules of politics are supposed to be played. And I know that according to those rules, the insiders are always supposed to beat the outsiders, that the status quo is always going to beat out change, that the Goliath is always going to beat David. But we've also seen in certain moments in our history that people can rise up and say, not this time.